for taking that on. And you have such a special and important role because people trust you. People trust the people who run their local pharmacy. We are used to going to our local drugstore to get our flu shots. I remember Christmas a couple of years ago, my dad marched me and my kids to the drugstore because I hadn't had them flu shotted yet. And he got really mad at me and he said, they are my grandchildren, we're all going. And it was such a great experience. So, merci beaucoup pour votre travail. Vous jouez un rôle essentiel toujours, mais aujourd'hui plus que jamais. J'apprécie ça beaucoup et ce sera très important, très utile pour moi et pour le Premier ministre de vous écouter et de savoir comment on peut vous aider en faisant votre travail dans vos communautés avec vos voisins. C'est important. Merci.
Thank you, Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. Those are very, very kind words. Up to this point, pharmacists in Newfoundland haven't been involved in the COVID vaccinations efforts yet, which is a shame because we play such an important role in flu campaigns every year. Just in 2020, Newfoundland pharmacists administered 40%, approximately 90,000 flu vaccines in our province. We're really, really hoping that we will soon be part of the COVID vaccination rollout plan. So I'm really focused on my colleagues across the country today who are administering vaccines every day in their pharmacies. We thought we'd go around to hear from everyone, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So we'll go from west to east. So BC pharmacists started to vaccinate in early April, but you're ramping up very quickly. So Agnes, can you tell us a little bit about your experience so far?
Yes, definitely. First of all, thank you, Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, for inviting all of us to this roundtable today. And thank you, Christina, for organizing. The COVID vaccination rollout in BC has definitely been exciting for pharmacies, to say the least. Things are changing constantly and very quickly every day. Just yesterday, our province, along with Ontario and Alberta, lowered the age limit for the AstraZeneca vaccine to 40. And shortly after the announcement, we had a lineup forming in our pharmacy. And in the short span of 2 hours, we vaccinated over 40 people. And speaking to our customers, most of them were referred by other friends who just got their vaccination. And they were just all texting each other, asking all their friends to come get their vaccination. And they just all came within an hour. It is really incredible how quickly word can spread, and it's inspiring to see how our communities have come together and help each other out during these challenging times. Pharmacists in BC are especially thrilled to be able to take part in all of this, to be able to help our communities, even though we just started immunizing in April, and we're only doing the AstraZeneca vaccine right now, and only selected pharmacies in BC are able to provide the COVID vaccination. We have vaccinated collectively over 91,000 people over the span of the first 2 weeks. The feedback from our customers have been extremely positive. Everyone has been so grateful to be able to get vaccinated. A lot of people have been taking photos and selfies just to document this historical moment in their lives. It's been amazing and uplifting to be able to witness all this hope that we're providing our customers with the COVID vaccines. And with the recent lowering of the age limit, we're confident that we'll continue to immunize as many people and much more and much quicker soon. And with the availability of the vaccines, we're hoping that we can expand the COVID vaccination program to all the pharmacies in BC, and that we'll be able to do all the COVID vaccines shortly. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Agnes. Caitlin, Alberta was one of the first provinces to administer the vaccine, and pharmacies are actually using all 3 vaccines. What's that been like? Oh, I think you're muted there, Caitlin.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on this. So Canadian pharmacists, and more specifically Alberta pharmacists, are leading clinical pharmacy practice actually across the globe. And the COVID-19 vaccine rollout has further demonstrated this. Albertans are showing up to utilize their local, trusted, accessible pharmacist in obtaining a life-protecting vaccine. The opportunity for pharmacists to utilize our knowledge and skill set to immunize Albertans has been so humbling to see their gratitude for our involvement in the immunization process. Pharmacists are equipped not only to administer the vaccine, but also repeatedly help Albertans sift through the multitude of information surrounding COVID-19 and the vaccines to reassure the public and offer honest and accurate advice. Alberta is offering all 3 vaccines within the province, but currently each pharmacy is siloed to a specific one. For example, my pharmacy is currently offering the AstraZeneca vaccine. This has enabled us to work with Alberta Health and other pharmacies to ensure a collaborative approach in vaccination, ensuring Albertans are cared for and guided through what can seem like an overwhelming process at first. And of course, there's challenges with any new initiative, and unlimited vaccine supply would solve a lot of our issues. But the rollout has enabled pharmacists to step up and help guide our patients through the process of obtaining immunization, working with Alberta Health to ensure Albertans are immunized as timely as possible, ultimately working toward herd immunity. Even though many Alberta pharmacists were not immunized prior to administering the vaccine to others, I think this rollout has really demonstrated what pharmacy teams have been doing throughout the duration of this pandemic. Showing up day in and day out, remaining fully accessible to patients, standing strong on the front lines, putting our patients first, offering our knowledge and compassion. Immunizing in rural Alberta has been so rewarding. I've said many times it feels surreal to have the opportunity to administer the vaccine and give a shred of hope after a year of struggles and fear. I've been fortunate to immunize my neighbors, the community members I grew up with in my small hometown, and this has further demonstrated pharmacists as a role in the community for a pillar of reliable, accessible, and essential healthcare service, even in the most uncertain of times. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caitlin. Like in Newfoundland, community pharmacists in Saskatchewan haven't yet started to administer vaccines, but I understand the first supply is coming in the next couple of weeks. Jairus, you were asked by the Saskatchewan Health Authority and the Saskatoon Tribal Council to assist with their COVID-19 Indigenous Immunization Center, which is also open to non-Indigenous people. As a pharmacist, what struck you the most?
Thank you. So hello, it's wonderful to meet you, Mr. Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jairus Swidrovich. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joining today from Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis in Saskatoon. I'm a pharmacist and Two-Spirit Saulteaux First Nations person and assistant professor of pharmacy at the College of Pharmacy and Nutrition at the University of Saskatchewan. What has struck me the most is how wonderfully Indigenous communities and organizations have developed and delivered their own COVID-19 immunization clinics. Although the Saskatoon Tribal Council represents the 7 First Nations communities within a 200-kilometer radius of Saskatoon, which includes my own community of Yellow Quill First Nation, Tribal Chief Mark Arcand shared a welcome video on YouTube where he welcomed all members of the community, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous, to attend the Saskatoon Tribal Council Clinic. While the focus has certainly been on administering COVID-19 immunizations, there has been something quite beautiful about seeing the clinic roll out with the spirit of reconciliation in the air. Right upon entry to the clinic, a smudge is offered, and the rest of the clinic experience takes place in a clockwise fashion around the clinic site, which is completed with an offering of a COVID care package that includes cleaning supplies and products from an Indigenous-owned small business. A message on the box says, "Thank you for doing your part to keep us all safe." Additional joy has been realized in discussions with clients when they see and are immunized by myself, an Indigenous pharmacist, and from one of the Saskatoon Tribal Council nations. I've had one client become tearful because she was so proud not only to see an Indigenous pharmacist, but to have an Indigenous pharmacist administering her vaccine. Additionally, as a pharmacist, what has also struck me is how there have only been a few other pharmacists participating in the general vaccine rollout so far in Saskatchewan. Certainly, there will soon be COVID-19 vaccinations offered at pharmacies throughout the province. However, it's remained a challenge for pharmacists to be considered as immunizers outside of the pharmacy setting. As the most accessible healthcare professionals in Canada, and often ranked the most trusted professionals of any kind, we as pharmacists are uniquely situated within Canada's healthcare system to provide services like COVID-19 immunizations. Finally, what has struck me is that beyond the obvious benefits of COVID-19 vaccination clinics, having pharmacists participate in clinics that also service Indigenous peoples places the pharmacy profession on the radar for Indigenous youth and adults as a possible career aspiration. With approximately 50% of First Nations in Canada living on reserve, and with so few pharmacists and pharmacies on reserve, the profession of pharmacy doesn't often register as a potential career aspiration. So I hope that my participation in these COVID-19 immunization clinics may also help catalyze Indigenous youth to pursue pharmacy as a profession, and that hopefully one day I will no longer be the only Indigenous pharmacy faculty member in Canada. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jairus. Cheryl, when did pharmacists start immunizing in Manitoba? And what's the demand been like for you and other pharmacies?
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, PM Raj Saini, fellow pharmacist. And good morning, Christina. Thank you so much for organizing this event. And welcome, Randy. Very excited to see a young pharmacist in the making. I practice out of St. Malo, which is a rural town in Manitoba, about 45 minutes south of Winnipeg. So very close to the US border, Minnesota border. We are the only pharmacy in town. The provincial government invited applications in February for pharmacies to participate in the vaccination program. We were so gung-ho about it. We applied right away, got accepted, and we were waiting for our stock. So our first shipment arrived in March. So March 11th was the first shipment. And as soon as we put the word out, we had a long list of people waiting. And it was kind of a hard task prioritizing who, of course, there's the age group, like the government had advised us, the age group who could get it. But it was kind of a hard task prioritizing from that age group who should get the vaccines. So being in a small town, we know our patients very well. So we were, I think, fairly able to prioritize people. For example, lung transplants, people with underlying conditions, we were able to prioritize them. And our first shipment of doses went in 4 days. And then we were waiting. And unfortunately, in between, the studies came out with the AstraZeneca, some of the side effects which were, and then after that, our second shipment came on April 14th. And by that time, the provincial government had offered the vaccine to 56 years of age and older. So people had a choice which vaccine they could get. So those who didn't want to travel to the other vaccine sites, they booked with our pharmacy. And those who wanted a particular vaccine, they had the choice, they opted to go with the other pop-up clinics and sites. So right now, yesterday, the provincial government has lowered the vaccination age to 40, and all our vaccine doses are spoken for. I just hope that we had enough so we don't have to keep people in the sidelines or put them on a waiting list. But nevertheless, it's very encouraging that people are signing up and they're just looking forward to getting vaccinated. And once, especially people who have been isolating this whole year, it's such a big relief for them to be vaccinated and at least have the freedom to see their newborn grandkids. Because some of the people with underlying conditions, they have been isolating so strictly that they were not even able to see their newborn grandkids in the family. So that's quite a joy to see that. In Manitoba, so far, about 350,000 people have been vaccinated, of which 56,000 are doctors and pharmacists administered vaccines. Only the AstraZeneca vaccine is available through pharmacies and medical clinics. The Moderna and Pfizer vaccine is out of specialty clinics or the pop-up sites where they do the central vaccination. So we are actually very proud and very happy to be part of this process where we can at least get back to some sort of a normalcy and hopefully beat this sooner than later. And I know PM, you're working very hard. Deputy PM, you're working very hard for the doses, and I hope we can, turn this page faster. And thank you for all your work, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you, Cheryl. Johar, we've been hearing a lot about vaccine hesitancy, vaccine shopping, and concern about the rare side effects. How are you dealing with that? And what are you hearing from your community?
So first off, good morning, and thank you for having us, Deputy Prime Minister and Mr. Prime Minister. It's a great opportunity to speak to you today. As you know, in Ontario, we're one of the hardest hit provinces with respect to COVID. It's been challenging, to say the least, but I firmly believe that pharmacies are probably the key solution to getting vaccines into the arms of the majority of Ontarians as being the most trusted and accessible healthcare providers in Ontario. My pharmacy is located in Toronto in a community with a lower socioeconomic status and let's face it, probably a little bit lower health literacy. So as a result, we felt that our community was especially more vulnerable to vaccine hesitancy and vaccine shopping. Therefore, our team recognized at a very, very early stage that we needed to educate our community. We needed to reach out to them and ensure that they knew that the risks of the vaccine are much lower than the actual risk of COVID or their complications. So we leveraged the resources from our professional association, from our whole health pharmacy banner. We also ran various social media campaigns on digital platforms to ensure that we could reach out to the majority of people as possible, because as we all know, everybody's plugged into technology these days. So we found that through these various channels, we were able to kind of get through to the majority of our local community. We ran through our doses of AstraZeneca, in record time. We waited for our second batch to come in. And now that the age has been dropped to 40 plus, as our colleagues have mentioned on today's call, that the demand has skyrocketed. So unfortunately, it's that 55 plus age group where I feel that vaccine shopping, vaccine hesitancy really became more prominent. But now that it's 40 plus, we see a lot more demand. And as Cheryl mentioned, as in Manitoba, all of our vaccines are spoken for. So ultimately, we do hope that in Ontario that we will have access to the other vaccines to get into the arms of Ontarians. I do feel that pharmacists are probably the best resource professionals and most accessible to be able to do that. So whether it be Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, or any other vaccine that's available, I highly encourage all governments at all levels to support pharmacists to be able to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johar. Bonjour, Frederick.
Bonjour.
Almost all pharmacies in Quebec are now administering vaccines. When did you start? And have you had any challenges, or has it gone well to date?
Bon matin à tous. Je m'appelle Frédéric Coussa. Je suis pharmacien propriétaire pour une pharmacie affiliée au groupe Jean Coutu située à Brossard, donc sur la rive sud de Montréal. Alors, avant de répondre à la question, j'aimerais parler un petit peu de la situation de la vaccination contre la COVID au Québec. Alors, c'est près de 1500 pharmacies qui sont impliquées actuellement dans la campagne de vaccination. Et la semaine dernière, en date du 15 avril, l'Association des pharmaciens propriétaires du Québec dévoilait que 50 000 doses avaient déjà été administrées en pharmacie communautaire. Donc, c'est très, très encourageant. On s'entend qu'on est rendu avec l'expérience, l'infrastructure. La dernière campagne de vaccination pour l'influenza nous a permis d'administrer 800 000 doses pour nos patients québécois. Alors, il y a beaucoup de travail à faire encore, mais je pense qu'on est dans la bonne direction. De mon côté, j'ai lancé la campagne le 7 avril dernier. On est encore en période de lancement, donc on a administré 63 doses pour le moment, donc en 3 jours de vaccination. J'ai d'ailleurs moi-même personnellement administré 20 vaccins la semaine dernière. Je voudrais qu'en tant que pharmacien, on est habitué de faire de l'intervention, de la prise en charge de patients, même vérifier le statut vaccinal. Mais de vacciner un patient, de donner l'injection, c'est des choses auxquelles on est moins habitué et j'ai beaucoup, beaucoup apprécié mon expérience. Ça nous permet de consolider la relation de confiance avec le patient. Et comme on l'a dit un peu plus tôt aujourd'hui, les pharmaciens, en fait, les patients se rappellent où ils ont reçu leur vaccin pour la COVID dans ce moment historique. Donc, de pouvoir donner l'opportunité à ces patients de se faire vacciner chez moi, c'est vraiment, vraiment quelque chose qui me motive à continuer. Alors, à partir de la semaine prochaine, on va accélérer la cadence. On parle de 110 doses qui vont être administrées la semaine prochaine par mon équipe de pharmaciens et mon infirmière. Et on va continuer au fil et à mesure que les doses vont nous être remises à accélérer la cadence pour vacciner le plus de patients possible. Pour parler des défis, on en a eu plusieurs. Le premier, je pense, c'est la formation. Je suis papa de 3 enfants et pharmacien propriétaire, donc le temps, effectivement, file beaucoup. Donc, de prendre tout le temps à suivre les formations nécessaires, ça a été tout un défi. Et je tiens à saluer le gouvernement d'avoir mis en place le programme PACME qui, grâce à sa subvention pour la QPP, on a eu plus d'1 million de dollars qui a été investi dans la formation des pharmaciens au Québec pour devenir des vaccinateurs. Alors, bravo, ça nous a beaucoup encouragés. C'est ce qui a permis à ce que je puisse plutôt former tous mes pharmaciens à devenir des vaccinateurs. Alors, pour terminer, je vous donnerai peut-être juste une petite expérience que j'ai vécue la semaine dernière. J'ai une patiente de 67 ans qui s'est présentée à la pharmacie, qui était avec plusieurs problèmes de santé, diabète, hypertension, etc. Et cette patiente de 67 ans n'avait jamais reçu de vaccin de sa vie. Et donc, pour elle, elle était très, très réticente à se faire vacciner. Et je pense qu'avec la formation, le bagage que j'ai acquis dans les dernières semaines, j'ai pu renforcer l'importance de la vacciner et surtout la rassurer, tant en lui expliquant, dans le fond, les bienfaits qui surpassaient nettement les risques. Et ça lui a permis de se faire vacciner et un pas de plus en avant pour pouvoir revenir à une vie normale. Alors, merci pour toutes ces belles opportunités.
Merci, Frederick. New Brunswick has been a leader across the country in using pharmacies. You're also using all 3 vaccines, and just about all pharmacies in the province are participating. Dennis, what's your secret to success?
Thank you, Christina. Good morning. Je te dirais que le secret, c'est que ça fait quand même 10 ans qu'on vaccine dans la province du Nouveau-Brunswick. Puis je te dirais que les patients ont pris goût. Ils adorent l'accessibilité. On était une des premières provinces au Canada à vacciner. Puis ça a vraiment changé la façon que les gens reçoivent leur vaccin. Puis après une campagne de vaccination contre la grippe, le gouvernement a vu vite qu'on était capable de relever le défi contre la vaccination de COVID. Puis je te dirais que les patients nous demandaient, ils voulaient que ce soit nous qui leur vaccinent. Quand on pense d'un aîné qui ne veut pas aller se mettre en ligne, quelqu'un de 82 ans qui ne veut pas se mettre en ligne pour des heures de temps dans des grosses cliniques, leur pharmacie locale, c'était vraiment la place à venir. Because I'm from New Brunswick, I'd like to switch over to English, the only bilingual province. I think New Brunswick, we showed the ability to pivot. Like Christina mentioned, we're doing all 3 vaccines. One week we were getting Pfizer, the next week we get Moderna. And I'd like to share with you a great story. I think the government, after NACI's guidelines changed, was looking at 30,000 doses of AstraZeneca going to expire maybe. And, we stepped up and said, look, give it to us, we'll take care of it. And we did what we do best. I think we educated patients, we comforted them, we told them it's okay to take. And last weekend, I did 600 doses on Saturday. I have another 600 booked next week. Pharmacies are doing 1,000 over a weekend. Our pharmacies, my pharmacies have injected over 1,000 people since the campaign has begun. So I think it's a true testament of what we can do in community. And when we work with government and see the value of pharmacy, I think we can do a lot for our population. So, and it's been, I have to say, a great trip so far, not without its challenges, but it's really rewarding. We got this white jacket when we graduated. I did 20 years ago to help people, and this is a true testament of what we can do. So thank you.
Merci. Thank you, Dennis. Diane, your pharmacy in Dartmouth has administered about 300 doses of Pfizer vaccine to people 65 and up over 4 days this week. Why do you think people want to get their vaccines at pharmacy?
Thanks, Christina, and thank you, Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, for this great opportunity to speak with you. So we heard from a customer, one of our patients yesterday, following giving those 300 doses, and it was a really nice phone call to receive. They mentioned how coming into the pharmacy and experiencing their vaccine and receiving their vaccine with us, how organized and professional and relaxing the atmosphere was. They were incredibly appreciative, and I think hearing that and hearing in general in Nova Scotia how well things are going in pharmacies, it's great to hear, and generally that represents the experience that patients are having right across the province. I think hearing this, it's important because I think that's what we do in pharmacies. We're used to doing things high volume, efficiently, and safely, and we are really the go-to place for things like vaccines. And of course, there's a lot of other things that we do on a regular basis in the same way. So hearing that things are going well in our province in this area is important as well. In Nova Scotia, we've been very fortunate for how things have played out. So we crossed the 200,000 mark of vaccines recently, and it's starting, the pace in Nova Scotia is starting to really pick up. And I think the reason that all of this has come together so well in our province is that the way that we do things here, all of our parties came together. So the associations, the regulators, government, pharmacare all came together very quickly to determine the best system to use to get vaccines into pharmacies. And so that's one of the reasons why a lot of the large portion of vaccines has been completed in pharmacies. So some of the key reasons I think in Nova Scotia that it is going well is because we've been very cautious in how quickly we've grown this. We started out with pilots. We wanted to make sure that we knew all of the things that we could run into, and then we quickly ramped up. So from all of the technology that we're using, the systems that are in place, we started slowly with all of those people coming together, and then we've been able to quickly go up to almost all 300 pharmacies offering vaccine in Nova Scotia very fast. So very cautious growth. We have used the Can Immunize app, and I don't think every province is using that. And that has been a real key to our success. From our patients' perspective, that is the one source that they go to in order to book their appointments and to get information. And from our perspective in pharmacies, it really streamlines us being able to offer vaccines efficiently. And, you know, even changes like yesterday with dropping the ages and changes like that, everything goes through one source so that we can focus on all of the things that we need to do day to day in pharmacy, including offering these vaccines. Another neat thing that has been very successful in Nova Scotia is that we have one source of supplies. So supplies are coming from a government department to every pharmacy right before we offer the vaccines. So we know that that's taken care of. So we're getting everything into our pharmacy that we need for those vaccines. It's not a concern that we need to worry about. And so that has been helped us to be very successful. There has been very strong and clear media information, which has been very important in Nova Scotia so that patients know where to go. They know not to bombard pharmacies because we're busy, obviously, giving the vaccines, and clear information about who is ready, what to do, you know, what steps to take when you're visiting to get your vaccine. So that's been very important as well. Culture of patients in Nova Scotia has been very important because they do allow us the time to get to where we need to. And then a very focused plan. We know that we're going age by age. There's no question that we're going outside of that. We're focusing on long-term care homes. We're going age by age so people know what to expect, and that's allowed for a very seamless operation with the vaccines. So in order to ensure this continues and so that pharmacy continues to be the destination for vaccines and so that we can continue to do this safely, I think we're all ready now for more supply. We've talked about that. So we do have a system in place to the point that if, you know, supply surprisingly showed up on our doorstep tomorrow, we'd be ready to go. And it's incredible to see that we're there already with that. And just to continue hearing from everybody on, you know, sort of what next steps will need to be done, how often we'll need to be doing this, and how long I think will be important so that we can continue to be successful. So thank you very much for the opportunity and look forward to chatting more.
Thank you, Diane. Last but certainly not least, Rebecca in PEI. What's been your biggest takeaway from the campaign?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. So I think the biggest takeaway from this campaign for me is that not only do pharmacists play an important role in administering vaccines, but we play a crucial role in advising, promoting, and supporting the uptake of vaccines. Having these vaccination clinics in our pharmacy has definitely increased the immunization rates in Canada. We are such a rural presence. We always have people coming to our pharmacy asking questions. They see the sign on that we are giving vaccines. We get those vaccine hesitant people. We get those people that think they can't have the vaccine because they have certain medical conditions or that they're on certain meds, and we are able to persuade them to get them otherwise. So we are the advisors. We are the educators. When people have general questions about their health, who do they call? They normally call their pharmacist first because we are so accessible, we're trusted, and we have a relationship with them. And they will call us and ask us everything and anything. And I'm just so thankful to be part of this process to roll out this health initiative. Having the vaccine clinics has been such a positive experience. All the people that come to our pharmacy have been so positive and encouraging as well. They love that they can come to somewhere they are comfortable with. They don't have to drive into town, go into crowded areas. We have a very efficient process at our pharmacy. It's appointment-based only. You can book online, you can call a phone number, and it's very quick. And people can often get in quicker with us than they can with public health, which is always a great bonus. We are only administering the AstraZeneca vaccine right now in our pharmacies and PEI, and it's only 55 up. So hopefully that will change and we'll be able to administer them to more populations. But overall, it has been just such a positive and encouraging experience.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think we've clearly demonstrated the importance of the role of the pharmacist in the rollout of the vaccine campaign here in Canada. And we truly thank you actually for the federal government support of our profession in participating in this. As Rebecca said, we are the most accessible healthcare professional. In many rural communities, we may be the only healthcare professionals. So it is imperative that we continue to participate in the vaccination campaign. And I look forward to a time when Newfoundland pharmacists can step up to the plate and assist in this rollout as well. So thank you everyone for taking the time to participate and share what's happening in your province. As we can see, we have lots in common, but everything is a bit different depending upon the provincial rollout plan. One thing we've noted is that although almost every pharmacy has said they want to participate in vaccine distribution, less than half have been enabled to in many parts of the country. So there are opportunities to ramp that up. So I'd like to open the discussion. Perhaps I'll turn it back to the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister to see if he has any questions or thoughts. Prime Minister?
Thank you so much, Christina, and thank you all of you for giving me such a great deep dive into how things are going in communities across the country. First of all, right off the top, I hear you. More vaccines would be great, and we are working extremely hard to get as many as we possibly can as quickly as possible, because we know that's how we get through this pandemic. We are now at the point where we're getting over 1 million vaccines in every single week, but we need to do more. As you'll know, we surpassed our goals for the end of March by actually almost 50%. So we're very much on track, but there's lots more we need, and particularly with the third wave hitting hard in some parts of the country, people are really anxious, and having the steady, reassuring voices of their friendly neighborhood pharmacists is unbelievably important, particularly as we get more doses to you. And of course, those are things that we're working on very, very closely with the provinces. But meeting Canadians where they are is really, really important in terms of reassuring. And as we talk about, and Rebecca, you talked about it, and Jory, you talked about it, and everyone else. The confidence that is so important that people need to have in the process and in the vaccines is something that they can really turn to you to rely on. Politicians regularly look at the list of most trusted professions with a tremendous amount of envy for pharmacists. But certainly in this case, the fact that you are so trusted is really, really important. And it is so great that you are seen by everyone across the country as an integral part of the rollout of vaccines, of getting everyone vaccinated in this country. Over the coming weeks, there's going to be more and more vaccine doses coming in, more and more population getting it. We are potentially going to get to a situation where we need to give people more direct confidence in the vaccines, in the process. So I'd love to hear a little more. I mean, Rebecca, you talked about it, Jory, you talked about it, but any others as well. What are some of the things that are key to convincing folks to be confident in getting that vaccine, and how can the federal government and provincial governments with our communications tools really continue to draw on your examples to convince people that this is the way we go through it?
Jairus, I saw your hand up, and Diane, and then I believe Cheryl. So Jairus?
Sounds good. So I recently co-authored a paper with Dr. Ian Mosby, who's a historian out of Ryerson University. We looked at the roots of vaccine hesitancy in Indigenous peoples across Canada, looking at some of the nutritional experimentation that was done in residential schools, the experimental tuberculosis vaccine, and even more current practices like forced and coerced sterilization of Indigenous women. Looking at these practices that have taken place both before and even in the present, we need to not only address those issues, but then also ensure that Indigenous voices are present at any and every table related to the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. Messaging needs to be shared in a way that is culturally sensitive and relevant to Indigenous peoples, and also messaging that includes things like, I'm getting this for the next 7 generations ahead of me. That's one of our biggest teachings, versus just in the here and now. I know that Chief Mark Arcand of the Saskatoon Tribal Council in his welcome video talked about how excited and anticipatory we are for returning to our ceremonies and our powwows and gathering with our friends and family. And community is just so important, especially in communities where there are crowded households and social distancing is really difficult in so many Indigenous communities across Canada. So I encourage for elder, knowledge keeper, and other Indigenous persons represented at all of these decision-making tables, and for Indigenous peoples to see themselves reflected in posters and pamphlets and TV ads and so on.
Diane?
Thanks, Christina. For me, something very simple that has been effective. So a lot of social media we're seeing with people in positions of authority or of influence. Today, Dr. Strang, for example, is getting his vaccine, and I'm sure that will be spread around. And every time we see government representative, patients come in and they'll say, I saw so-and-so got their vaccine, so it must be okay. I think that's important. So the more and more we can see of that, I think will be key. And I know every phone call that I get where somebody's asking me, what is your opinion? And the simple thing that I need to say to them is, if it showed up here today, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, and somebody offered it to me, I would take it. And that's all they need to hear. So the more and more we can show examples of where we're getting it, where politicians are getting it, where people of influence are getting it, I think will be key to continue that.
Cheryl?
Thanks, Christina. Yes, as Diane said, for me, what works is we took the doses right away and telling our patients that we got it, we're fine. That seems to answer a lot of questions, and that's very practical, I find.
Mr. Prime Minister, in Ontario, they've just brought down the age of eligibility 40 plus. I know you get your flu shot every year, and usually at a pharmacy. So are you planning to get your COVID vaccine? And would you consider having a pharmacist administer it?
That is actually the plan right now. We're still working out the details, but I look forward to having a pharmacist give me my vaccine as soon as we can secure an appointment in the proper processes. So we'll keep you posted on it. But my experience every year at the nearby pharmacy getting the flu shot is always unbelievably positive. And if I can encourage folks to know that it's safe and indeed it's the right thing to do, I'm looking forward to that. So no question about it, and stay tuned. Maybe I could turn to Chrystia if she has a question.
Sure, Prime Minister. And in answer to that question for me, I'm going to get vaccinated as soon as I can. And actually this morning, I treat my children like unpaid IT support workers in our household. They get room and board. And so I got my kids to get on the computer, and they are working to make an appointment for me and my husband. My daughter said we're on a wait list, so I have to check on that after this. But as soon as I can, I'll get mine too, and I hope at a local pharmacy. The thing I was wondering that I wanted to ask you guys is, how are you keeping track of people for the second dose? And are people going to come back to the place they got their first dose to get their second one?
Frederick?
Alors, je vais répondre en français, si ça vous convient. Donc, effectivement, nous, ce qu'on a pris comme décision, c'est de donner le rendez-vous 112 jours plus tard, et toujours le patient va recevoir la deuxième dose au même endroit où il a reçu la première dose. Ça simplifie grandement le processus. Alors, tout est organisé au Québec via la plateforme Clic Santé. Alors, c'est une plateforme qui est très facile à utiliser et qui permet vraiment de récupérer toutes les données de vaccination et ainsi faire un bon suivi du déroulement de la campagne de vaccination au Québec. En fait, je pense que la clé pour nous, les pharmaciens québécois, a été l'accès à l'information. Et je tiens à remercier l'Association des pharmaciens propriétaires du Québec, l'Ordre des pharmaciens du Québec, qui nous ont shippé des centaines de courriels dans les dernières semaines, ce qui n'a pas toujours été facile, effectivement, et des nuits très tard, mais effectivement, d'avoir accès à l'information et surtout de donner des bonnes informations à nos patients. ont permis de les encourager à vouloir prendre leur deuxième rendez-vous et à revenir pour avoir la bonne immunogénicité à long terme. Merci.
Dennis, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I guess I can't, not much to add, but yes, we are booking our second dose 14 weeks after the first, making sure that people come back to us. They're not obliged to come back to us, but we encourage it. That way we minimize vaccine wastage, because if we're giving 100 doses today in 14 weeks, I better be giving out 100 doses. So, and again, working with government and public health on that. So it's going well, we'll see, but that's going to make sure that the province of New Brunswick was well immunized.
And Cheryl.
In Manitoba, we are focusing on the first dose right now. So as soon as somebody gets a shot, we enter it into our computer system. And when we get directions from our provincial government that we can start booking for the second dose, we can just run a report. We'll print out all the people who got their first doses, and then we can contact them for the second dosage. And the government actually encourages everybody to get it at the site they got their first dosage. So it's easy to track.
Agnes, I saw your hand up.
Yes, I'm an associate owner of a Shoppers Drug Mart. So within the Shoppers Drug Mart system, we're lucky to have set up something where we're gonna send our customers a text message in 16 weeks time to remind them to book an appointment for their second dose. And then at that time, the text message will also have a link that they can click on to show all the stores and locate which ones have the vaccine at that point in time. So it's a convenient way for all the customers to get reminded, and they don't have to go back to the same pharmacy. I've been telling everyone that they can go to any pharmacy close to them, but if they want to come back to us, they can always come back to us too.
Johar?
Yeah, similarly in Ontario, we're using the Covaxon platform. So when we administer the first dose, patients will get basically a receipt that indicates that their second dose is in 16 weeks. And we encourage, just like in other provinces, for patients to come back to the same pharmacy. We also have a platform where patients are booking and they get the reminder on their email or text message when their second dose is. So it should already be in their calendar.
Thank you. Diane?
Yeah, just similar. So I'd mentioned the Can Immunize app. So fortunately, that's all done through that app as well. By the time they leave, or by the time they have their vaccine, they find out when their next dose is. And it is going to be scheduled back in our pharmacy to the point that when I receive those supplies that I mentioned, I've already received the supplies for that second dose. So that's all been planned from day one, very conveniently.
Thank you. Prime Minister, may I ask if anyone has any questions for you?
Excellent.
Johar?
Thank you. I want to ask the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, what do you feel as a federal government has been the biggest barrier for distribution of vaccines from a federal to the provincial level? I've heard that, for example, the transmission of vaccines to, for example, New Brunswick was very smooth, whereas in other provinces wasn't so smooth. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it depends very much on various situations, and indeed it depends on the vaccines. The Pfizer, as you know, is delivered directly from the company to the point of distribution. So the federal government isn't involved, and the Pfizer is sort of the backbone of our deliveries right now. We're getting over 1 million a week every day. They've been 1 million every week, and they've been flowing those directly to the point of distribution. So there's no challenges on that. Moderna has, on their end, faced some manufacturing challenges that has made a few days delay here and there that we know we're all sort of having to readjust to every now and then. And AstraZeneca is coming from a number of different places, the US, the Serum Institute in India, even I believe some in South Korea. So the coordination of getting these vaccine doses into arms as quickly as possible is something that we've actually been working on with the provinces since since the end of summer, since the beginning of fall, with the military involved in logistics, Major General Denis Fortin, with the Government Operations Center, with local public health authorities, hospitals as partners. It really varies depending on the complexity of sort of the local systems sometimes, but know that everything is being done to make it as smooth as possible, to get that clarity and predictability as well. I mean, a lot of it is, as you've mentioned a number of times, the planning for things. So we have been absolutely transparent about what doses we're expecting to receive in the coming weeks. We share the schedule we get with the company, from the companies, with the provinces as quickly as we can. If there are adjustments or slowdowns, we share that right away. So the information that we confirm and flow through is as open, as transparent as possible. I mean, you can see some countries that don't have provinces, that have a single system, whether it's Israel or others, that have been a little less, or have been able to be sort of very, very direct in what they have. But we've chosen being transparent as quickly as we can. So we send information, and if the company has a slowdown and there's a few days delay, well, we communicate that right away, and there's an adjustment. But it is something that we're continually working to improve on with the provinces, and any challenges or flags we'll respond to very quickly to make sure that people have, because it's not just about getting the doses quickly. It's about people having confidence that the system is working well and flowing. And if someone books an appointment and doesn't get to show up because they weren't confirmed doses coming through, that adds to hesitancy in the sense that, oh, maybe everything's not as dialed in as we would hope it would be.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one last question. I saw your hand up, Cheryl.
Prime Minister Trudeau. My question is regarding the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's one of our, it can increase our, ability to administer, because it's a single dose, it can be stored at room temperature. So what's your feedback on that?
We are all very excited about the idea of a one-dose vaccine. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been approved by Health Canada as safe for Canadians. We are watching, of course, very carefully some of the questions that are being asked around the world to make sure that those decisions can still hold. We are hoping to receive about 300,000 J&J vaccines by the end of April. But then we're not sure when sort of the follow-up deliveries will be. So as soon as we know when they come in and make decisions around what the best utilization will be, we'll keep you apprised. Obviously, as you pointed out, one of the things that Canada has been good about is having so many different potential sources of vaccines. So if there's a slowdown with this one or that one, we can lean on others to move forward, and that sort of insurance or that broad portfolio has been a part of being able to move forward. I mean, for example, nobody knew that Pfizer would end up being as solid in its deliveries or more solid than the others, but because we had a great deal with a solid contract with Pfizer from the beginning, among others, we're lucky that one. Other countries that didn't go as hard with Pfizer, for example, don't have the same levels of stability. So in general, that diverse portfolio, well, we all know diversity is a very good thing. Before I turn to Chrystia, and then I'll say a few words, I would love to hear both from Randy on a young person who's entering into the world of being a pharmacist, and how this year has impacted your life choices and made you either more excited or less excited about the career you've embarked on. And then I'd love to give Raj, our MP/pharmacist, an opportunity to share his perspective.
Hi, thank you. First of all, it's an absolute honor to be here today with everyone. So thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. I'm extremely proud to be a part of the pharmacy profession, and this year has only increased that. My experience working at a local Ottawa pharmacy has been nothing but positive and rewarding. And I'm usually the first point of contact that patients see because I'm doing COVID intake. So I've been able to talk to a lot of my patients, answer their questions, and explain the vaccine and some vaccine hesitancy with them. And I'm also excited because I'm receiving my immunization training in May at the University of Waterloo. So I will also be vaccinating patients, and I'm really looking forward to that as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Raj.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you, Madam Deputy Prime Minister. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really glad you had the chance to actually see and hear of how impactful pharmacists have been. We're somewhat of a quiet profession. We don't speak too much, but we carry a heavy stick. And in this case, I'm glad that you were able to witness that going through this pandemic of how much of an impact pharmacists will actually make at the community level by decreasing vaccine hesitancy, but also contributing to the rollout. Now, all of them I know as being part of this profession that they probably told you only 1/10 of actually what they do because they're very modest, so they're probably working 10 times as hard. So I'll say it for them, and they're probably smiling right now because they know what I'm talking about. But no, I'm glad we had this opportunity. I'm glad everybody had an opportunity to share their views. I really believe that as we go through this pandemic, that one of the sort of the stalwarts of this campaign will be pharmacists because of your close contact with your patients, because of the location of your pharmacies being very present in a lot of communities, and also by the connection you have with your patients on reducing that vaccine hesitancy, but also creating an opportunity for them not pick. So thank you very much for all the work that you do, and back to you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Chrystia.
Hey, well, je veux seulement dire merci beaucoup tout le monde. C'était vraiment pour moi une discussion très, très inspirante. Et je dois dire que maintenant, je pense peut-être c'était une erreur pour moi de ne pas devenir une pharmaciste parce que je vois comment c'est une carrière importante, comment vous vraiment contribuez à vos communautés. Thanks for the inspiration. Thanks for providing so much energy and so much commitment to my morning. It's so clear to me how connected all of you are to your communities. You know, hearing Cheryl talk about, you know who's had the transplant and who needs the vaccine first, or Caitlin talk about vaccinating your neighbors. That's a really special, unique thing all of you bring to this vaccination effort. And I think it's going to get more important now than ever, because this is the moment when we need to be sure everyone gets vaccinated. And who do you trust more than your local pharmacist? I totally agree with that. And then the final thing I want to say is, it really lifted my heart to hear so many of you talk about, yes, you're working really, really hard, but also to talk about how much personal satisfaction it is giving you to play this historic role and, to quite literally transform the lives of people in your community, to liberate them from these COVID lockdowns. So I'm glad you're getting that satisfaction. You deserve it. Thank you for being so great. And let's get COVID conquered. The economy needs it, guys. You got to help me out too, okay? Thanks.
Christina, do you have any final words before I wrap it up?
Just thank you to everyone for taking the time to participate, since I know many of you are in the midst of managing vaccines at your pharmacy today. And thank you, Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, for taking the time out of your busy day for hearing what it's like on the pharmacy front lines. I can say one thing for sure, every pharmacist I've spoken to over the past months have said how important this is and that they want to play their part. As more vaccines come into the country, we expect that all pharmacies will be eagerly jumping in. So thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister and Prime Minister, for joining us today. So back to you, sir.
Thank you, Christina. And let me just first start by saying I know Chrystia is sincere, and she always is, about wanting to help more people. But I can speak for myself personally. I can speak for an awful lot of Canadians that we're very, very glad she took the career she has and has been an extraordinary finance minister, delivering a budget that is really, really going to help a whole bunch of Canadians across the country. So we're glad to have you as part of our team team, Chrystia. But I also recognize that in this Team Canada to fight COVID, the role that all of you play is unbelievably important. And we talked an awful lot today about the connection you have with Canadians in the community. Et c'est super important, cette connexion que vous avez avec vos concitoyens, ce lien de confiance, cette approche que vous avez est essentielle dans la façon qu'on va passer à travers. But I don't want you to just think about those connections and that engagement you have towards the community around you. I want you to recognize how unbelievably important you are, both individually and collectively, in passing messages back up as well to politicians, to leaders, to healthcare professionals throughout the provincial and territorial systems about what's working, about what's not, about where the needs are. Your status as deeply embedded in the community is both a benefit to the community, but also a direct benefit to our system as a whole and to Canada as a whole. So while, and I don't mean to lay on extra work or extra expectations, but as Raj pointed out, you're capable of it. As you engage at the community level, as you support your neighbors and community members, also think about pushing hard on the system through leaders like Christina and others in your provincial associations to make sure that decision makers are always thinking about you, there to support you, and there to create opportunities for you to do even more to help Canadians get through this. Because the only way we get through this is by everyone doing everything they can to do it. And pharmacists, well, as always, you guys have a lot more to do than many of the rest of us. And we're counting on you to continue delivering it with the grace, with the presence, with the connection that you've always have. So thank you, all of you, for everything you're doing. I won't take up more of your time because I know you're all very busy, mais merci d'avoir pris quelques moments pour nous tous aujourd'hui et continuer le travail extraordinaire. Merci tout le monde.